My name is Wolfgang and I'm a painter, and I painted this project, Fake News, because at the moment it is very important to observe the dynamics of fake news, starting from the riots on the Capitol in Washington and going to different demonstrations and riots against the corona crisis and corona measures of governments, even here in Vienna, where fake news and different theories of conspirations are unreflected, transported from people to people. To deal with this quite complicated subject of fake news, I invited 4 different witnesses to analyze this subject. The first witness I want to introduce you here is the psychoanalytic view. As can be seen in this painting, a little child is always changing its view from the father or mother's shelter to the outside world. And it has to be confronted with the contradictions and the terrible things which are happening in the world, and it has to internalize it. If it has internalized it, it becomes an adult person. And other psychoanalysts like Bruno Schulz or Gordon Lawrence have transported this phenomenon to big group dynamics and behavior of people. If a whole people is in danger from outside, it becomes very anxious and doesn't look outside. It has only one view inside. And if you see a people which is in peace, it can have many different views at the same time. It is a high diversity. What is problematic at this moment with fake news is that even in a situation of peace, as it is now more or less, at least for the United States and European countries, there is no need for this schizophrenic, paranoid anxiety and not willing to have different opinions. It is no need for this, and therefore it is a very problematic situation which is endangering the society from inside, because the society behaves as if it would be in war. There is no differentiation, there is only one truth, and there is only one thing which is correct. Like Trump says, they have stolen the election, and something like 70 or 80% of Republican senators believe it. And similar to statements in front of the corona crisis in Austria, there are these statements which have no differentiation. Bruno Schulz calls this phenomenon also the tent phenomenon, where all the people are rushing into a tent which is giving shelter to them, and in this tent there is space only for one opinion. The next witness I want to call in this subject of fake news is the Greek drama, the Greek theater. In essence, there was about 400 before Christ. It's usual to have 3 days of the so-called Dionysos festivals, when all the Athenian people have participated, even the slaves. And they have been marching in the Panathenaean procession between the holy places up to the Acropolis, and also attended 3 days long the festival theater performances at the Dionysos Theater. In this theater and in these rituals, it was possible to handle all these terrible conflicts between the individual needs of the people and the society laws and pressures, because the city of Athens had to go very often to war, and the young men have to go to fight, and there were very many victims in the population. They had to digest mentally. And therefore, this theater had a specific role to give some help to the people. The third witness I want to introduce here is Bruno Schulz. He is a poet and a writer from Lemberg. Today it's the region of Lviv, who has been writing different fantastic novels and stories. And unfortunately he is not known very well because he was in between different national interests. But one of his fantastic pieces is The Comet, and it shows that the time when people were interested in ever new inventions made from electricity. His father was experimenting very much with electricity and new apparatus, and always a group of society was observing his experiments. Even here it was some kind of hypnosis by electrical waves and electricity and lightning, which he installed. And he had to do all the time new and more interesting effects in order to keep the attention of the people. At the end, it was not possible anymore to keep up the attention of the people, and it was only the comet which threatened to kill everybody on the road, which had all the attention of the people. When all the attention of the people in the play of Bruno Schulz were attracted by the comet and the father had nothing to do anymore, he went to the chimney of his house and he tried to get his head into the chimney and look up through the chimney to the stars. So the chimney became something like a telescope for him, where he could make it more and less sharp by some kind of adjustation, and so he could observe the coming of the comet through his own telescope, his chimney. Here you see a painting summarizing the two last witnesses in a way, because it's a presentation of the Dionysos theater, which still today is as a ruin existing at the foot of the Acropolis. This is the Acropolis. So it has been directly down from the Acropolis, where the plays took place. And I positioned something like a performance of the comet into the theater as some kind of fantasy. The fourth witness is Umberto Eco. He wrote in a little book the Characteristica of Fascism, and what he calls Urfascism, which is the fundamentals of fascism in 14 criteria he has been describing. And this is very interesting because it's a very concise description. It is too much to show a painting for every one of these. I want to take out 2 or 3 which I think are very relevant for fake news. One is the envy people have vis-à-vis other people who are much richer, or at least they think they are much richer. So Umberto Eco remembers that when he was a small boy, he still was living under Mussolini, and at that time his Italian parents and neighbors and friends told him that the English people, who were much richer obviously, had 5 meals a day, whereas the poor Italians can afford only 3. And you have to think, eating and dining is the most important thing for Italians. Another criterion from Umberto Eco defining fascism is the linkage to tradition. It is very important that people, everything what people say and do has an intense linkage to the old tradition. Even if there is progress, if there is new technology, it has to be linked to tradition. There is no space for new science, and there is no space for anything which is overwhelming a new vision. Everything has to be dominated by traditional dimensions. This painting shows a Muslim woman as a fighter in some kind of jiu-jitsu or similar Asian fighting sports. It illustrates the contrary of this criterion, because it's a woman who is fighting, a woman who is breaking the tradition of being only at home, and a woman who is also the strong person, which leads over to another criterion of Umberto Eco, which can be illustrated by this painting as well, which is machismo, where machismo is so important that there is no possibility for a woman to fight. A woman has to subordinate and to be at the household. At the end, I would like to ask the question to which extent this subject of fake news has to do with fascism. I only remember an interview with a witness, an old woman who has been a young girl during the 1938 in Vienna, looking into the courtyard from her apartment, and there were all the time young boys playing ping pong and any kind of sports, but the moment the Anschluss came, they jumped out from the window with perfect uniform of Hitlerjugend and had a complete parade of their rituals. And this old lady told me then, "Oh God, where did we have our